Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to my Tome Topple for round 12 TBR. So I wasn't intending to do Tome Topple and I didn't even realise that it was going on, but I just started Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell on the 8th. And then perusing YouTube on the 9th, I discovered that I had inadvertently started Tome Topple. So I will be reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell for Tome Topple. Now let's get into a bit more about Tome Topple itself. Tome Topple is held this year from the 8th to the 21st of August, and there are a whole list of challenges to read books over 500 pages long. And like I said, I always love this challenge, but so this year, as you know, I am reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. That is my number one priority. But I thought, why not go through some of the books that I could possibly also get to if I do manage to finish Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell a little bit earlier than expected. So there are a number of prompts, but there is a limit to how many books you can relate one of the prompts to. So that means, for one book, can only relate to 2 prompts, which I think is fair enough because sometimes you can relate all the prompts to one book, which is quite a feat in itself, but at the same time it is a challenge to try and read as many big books on your shelf. So challenge number 1 is to read a book that's been on your TBR for the longest. Now I have no idea what that could possibly be. This one has been on my shelf for quite a long time, and so I would probably either list it there or perhaps The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, but maybe it might come out as Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Prompt number 2 is to read a tome audiobook. And what I do love about an audiobook is because when I have very long commutes, such as driving for work, I usually prefer to listen to either a podcast or an audiobook. So I am actually listening to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell as an audiobook during my drives, and then when I'm at home I am reading this lovely text. Prompt number 3 is a tome you've most recently acquired. And for me, I picked up this copy of Naomi Keene's This Changes Everything. It is a Penguin classic. It's more of a Penguin science book as well. So I would really like to get more into climate science. I do read a lot of nature writing, which is more about trees, animals, biology, things like that. But this is more about that kind of big look climate science. Prompt number 5 is relatively easy, and it is to read at least 1 tome. That is my goal. I am at least going to read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I'm going to do that as probably my longest TBR, and for the prompt of at least reading 1 tome. So that's the challenge. That's my goal. Prompt number 6 is to read a tome by a Black author. So I am continuing to read this book. I started it in very late June, but I am reading David Olusoga's Black and British: A Forgotten History. So this is a book about Black history in England, looking at disproving the Windrush mentality, where people who came from Jamaica in the 1960s were the first Black people in Britain, which is very incorrect, obviously, and so it's just really incredibly fascinating. If you can find a copy of this one, I highly recommend it. It comes in at nearly 600 pages, so it definitely fits within the tome category, but it is absolutely fascinating and a really interesting era by era look at the Black people in England and their presence that they made. I know there's also a BBC program which I'm going to try and find after I finish reading this book. Prompt number 7 is to read a tome from a genre that you don't usually read from. That's quite hard for me because I tend to read from a lot of genres, but one that you might not technically read from is graphic novels, for example. I'm not sure where they stand on the tome category, but On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden comes in at just over 525 pages, so it is a hefty graphic novel, but apparently it is amazing. I've had it on my shelf for a few months now and I definitely want to get around to it. I've read Tilly Walden's other works and I really thoroughly enjoyed them, so I think this is definitely one that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy, and it might be a really interesting tome that you might like, something very much outside of your usual reading scope. Prompt number 8 is a tome with the most amount of pages on your TBR. Once again, that honour is going to go to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. There's over 1,000 pages in this book, but I am very excited. I'm very excited to get into it. It is a hefty tome, but so far the writing's been absolutely brilliant. The last prompt is a book that you didn't get to read during a previous Tome Topple, or in this case a book that you have kind of put down and you said you'll pick it up later. For me, what I'm doing in this case is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I was in fact buddy reading this with a very dear friend of mine. She finished it and loved it, and I got through the first 8 chapters and then put it down because I was reading some other very interesting books. But I did thoroughly enjoy what I read, so I do want to continue on with this one. Another option for me would be The Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. I actually have read the first book in this series. This is book 2 with these absolutely fantastic covers by the Australian publisher Allen and Unwin. But yeah, so this is book 2. I did enjoy the first one. It wasn't kind of what I was expecting towards the end, and that did frustrate me, but I think it would left it in a really good place to succeed into the second book. So I've always remembered how that one panned out. But I think this one comes in just over 500, nearly 600 pages long. And so really, perhaps if it's a series that have, quite large books going all the way along, it might be something that you're wanting to get stuck into the next book in the series. Could be an option. Alright, so that is my recommendations really. It didn't turn out to be quite a TBR video because I'm just 100% focusing on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Because in all fairness, this is 2 tomes in one. It is over 1,000 pages. It is very dense. It's one of those books with footnotes. There's so many different histories. It's written like it's set in its time in the early 1800s. So I am loving it. But it's definitely going to be a really interesting challenge for my fantasy reading. But otherwise, if you're participating in Tome Topple, please let me know down below. I always love watching people's videos because I'm always inspired to find out some new tomes that I could potentially read for the next Tome Topple. If you're interested in looking into some other videos or announcement videos of Tome Topple, I'll link a few down below for you to check out. But otherwise, happy reading. Good luck if you're participating in Tome Topple, or if you're not but you are reading a very hefty book, good luck with that as well. So happy reading, and I'll see you next time. Bye!